Let's talk about how Joe Biden's newest policy decisions will be a massive help for Tesla's energy division. We all know that Biden doesn't talk about Tesla, at least not unless he's forced to, and in the context of the vehicle division, that really doesn't matter either way because Tesla has more orders for new cars than they can possibly fill. But when it comes to energy products like solar and large-scale battery storage, there is actually a lot that the government can do and is planning to do that will help this industry to thrive in the United States. From taking measures to make land more accessible for green energy projects, to extra funding and loans to make new green energy more affordable. The Biden administration has even invoked the Defense Production Act to accelerate the domestic production of lithium-ion battery materials. It's all very good stuff, but it's also a very broad and complex topic. So we're going to do our best to simply break down how Joe Biden's policies and proposals will create new opportunities for green energy products like Tesla's solar panels and megapack batteries. Okay, right off the top, I am Canadian and I'm not taking political sides regarding Republicans or Democrats. I'm just here to try and explain what's on the table right now. Got it? Good. So, in President Joe Biden's 2023 federal budget that was released just a couple weeks ago, we are seeing a significant increase in spending to support green energy and move towards a carbon-free electrical grid in the not-so-distant future. Now, just for context, the U.S. federal government works on a fiscal year that begins October 1st. So when we say 2023, we mean starting in October. On the whole, the Biden administration is proposing to spend nearly $45 billion across all aspects of the federal government to try and combat climate change in 2023. This is an increase of $16.7 billion over the previous budget. Coincidentally, this is nearly the exact amount of money that Elon Musk just spent to buy Twitter.com. So Biden is proposing to spend one Twitter per year on green energy, which is just awesome. Biden's plan for the USA is to reach net zero by 2050. Obviously, Biden won't be alive to see that because he's already old as shit, but it's still a very good plan. And this is built on 4 core pillars. Number 1 is to reach a 50% reduction from 2005 levels in economy-wide greenhouse gas pollution by 2030. So, in 8 years from now, there will be half as much pollution being created as there was in the year that Star Wars Revenge of the Sith was released in theaters. Pillar 2 is to create 30 gigawatt hours of offshore wind energy generating capacity. Pillar 3 is to reach 50% of new vehicles being zero emissions, which is a pretty weak goal to set for 2050. Honestly, the market should sort that out on its own by more like 2030, maybe 2035 at most, which brings us to Joe's 4th pillar, eliminating all carbon from the US electrical grid by 2035. So goodbye to coal and natural gas-powered electricity and transition completely to sun, wind, hydro, and nuclear. The budget includes $200 million for a new initiative called the Solar Manufacturing Accelerator. That would help create a robust manufacturing sector for solar panel deployment without relying on imported goods manufactured using what the administration refers to as unacceptable labor practices, by which they mean the Chinese manufacturing of photovoltaic cells that exploits forced labor by minority Muslim groups, allegedly. This is great news for Tesla, not only because they manufacture solar panels themselves, but also for their megapack storage product, because the more solar energy is being generated, the more demand there will be for large battery solutions to store and regulate that energy. Last September, the U.S. Department of Energy released a study that claimed solar energy could provide 37 to 42% of national electricity demand by 2035. Compare that to the year 2020, where solar accounted for just 3% of all U.S. energy. The U.S. government also acknowledges that their own country has fallen behind in all aspects of green energy manufacturing. China produces 80% of the world's battery cells and solar energy inputs, and controls global production for many of the refined minerals and materials that are essential for clean energy technologies. But more on that in a little bit. To incentivize new innovation and infrastructure at home, the Biden administration wants to set aside $15 billion in discretionary funding for these projects. This includes up to $5 billion in new lending authority for the Department of Energy to support loans for eligible projects that avoid, reduce, or sequester greenhouse gas emissions, which includes support for domestic critical mineral supply chains. There is also $6.5 billion in USDA loan authority for rural electric loans to support additional clean energy, energy storage, and transmission projects. That is a lot of extra money that people will have access to and can do a lot of good to accelerate and expand renewable projects. Is this good for Tesla? Absolutely, because a good amount of this new money lent out by the feds will inevitably be spent on solar and battery storage projects, and it's pretty hard to have that conversation without including Tesla Energy. Maybe someone wanted to build a solar farm but didn't have the funds to purchase battery storage yet. Now they can borrow money from the government and buy megapacks. Maybe someone was going to buy just a couple of megapacks, but now they can take out this loan and buy more of them. I can't see any issue with borrowing money to build renewable energy infrastructure because this stuff pays for itself. There's a reason Elon Musk is pushing Tesla further into the energy sector, and that's because this industry will make him a trillionaire. I have no doubt about that. And the administration has even put some thought into helping provide land to construct these projects. The Department of the Interior will receive $291 million to accelerate and expand clean energy deployment on public lands and offshore waters. This funding will support the planning and permitting of solar, wind, and geothermal energy projects and associated transmission infrastructure. So if someone is in need of land to establish their green energy project, the federal government is willing to provide public land for them to do that. This is in line with the administration's goal of deploying 25 gigawatts of onshore renewable energy from the public lands by 2025. Okay, that's enough budget. Let's move on to something else here. The Defense Production Act. This was recently invoked by President Biden to accelerate the build-out of a domestic battery materials supply chain. The first time this particular act was used was back in the 1950s by President Truman to boost U.S. steel production in the Korean War. Now it's being used to prioritize the metals of the future: lithium, cobalt, and nickel. Now, of course, the White House's announcement was light on details, specifically the amount of government funding available, and this isn't going to be an instant revolution. But we can talk about the implications this decision will have over time. In 1952, at the height of the Korean War, President Truman told the American people, "Our national security and our chances for peace depend on our defense production, and our defense production depends on steel." About a month ago, after the realization set in that the United States has no control over its own resource supply chain and is almost wholly dependent on foreign countries that were quickly becoming enemies in a new Cold War, President Biden said this: "To promote the national defense, the United States must secure a reliable and sustainable supply of such strategic and critical materials," by which he means lithium, cobalt, nickel, manganese, and graphite, the ingredients for a high energy density lithium-ion battery. Yes, you can make a functional LFP battery with just iron and lithium and work around most of those other metals, but you still need that lithium, and the only way that we can get enough refined lithium, as of right now, is through China. That is a problem. Biden likes to use the term unreliable foreign sources. And then there's Russia. They've just made nickel problematic as well. Battery production requires high-grade, or so-called Class 1 nickel, and Russia's Norilsk nickel accounts for around 17% of the global supply. Talk about unreliable foreign sources. The Defense Production Act is intended as a federal government accelerator for a domestic battery metals supply chain that is still in its infancy. Biden claims that without presidential action, the United States cannot reasonably be expected to provide the capability for those needed industrial resources, materials, or critical technology items in a timely manner. New battery mineral projects will be given a helping hand, both in terms of capital expenditure and winning public acceptance. A big part of this is going to be rewriting the United States laws on mining, which were written in 1872. Not a typo, 1872. The U.S. is still operating resource extraction on laws written during the gold rush for prospectors using nitroglycerin and pickaxes. You could say that it's overdue for an update. And this is one of the things that the Defense Production Act is going to help prioritize. The real significance of invoking the DPA is that it elevates battery metals to the top of the U.S. critical materials supply list. Previously, the Biden administration has only used this act to secure vaccines and enhance testing. So this means that securing domestic or friendly supplies of lithium and nickel is now in the same top priority category as the pandemic. And, luckily for everyone, mineral security seems to be about the only thing that Democrats and Republicans can agree on. The Biden administration has already committed up to $3 billion to increase battery metals production thanks to last year's infrastructure bill, which was passed with bipartisan support. And not only does this effort get supported by both parties in the U.S. government, it also shares support between both nations of North America. Up here in Canada, our federal government has been having a very similar conversation around securing critical minerals. Canada is absolutely loaded with these metals, but we've so far been doing a garbage job at exploiting those resources. It's a complicated issue. Our energy sector is still hopelessly tied to oil and gas extraction, and every time anyone even tries to talk about diverting resources away from that, this province called Alberta immediately threatens to burn the whole country to the ground. Anyway, earlier this month, it was announced that Canada's federal budget will include an investment of 3.8 billion Canadian dollars for an 8-year strategy to accelerate the production and processing of critical minerals needed for the electric vehicle battery supply chain, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, I know, but you've got to remember that we only have about 35 million people up here, about 1/10 of the US population. So we only have about 1/10 of the amount of funding via tax dollars. But here's the good stuff. The northern areas of Canada contain a huge amount of nickel, lithium, cobalt, and magnesium. There is significantly more of these critical minerals available in Canada than there are in the US. So if both countries work together and make this a new priority, then North America can come out of this rough patch as a strong global leader in renewable energy. Wouldn't that be amazing? And of course, this is all good news for Tesla, because we know that they are constantly hustling to secure new mineral supply contracts. They're working deals in New Caledonia, Australia, Brazil, all over the place. Obviously, if they had the opportunity to make these kind of deals with American-based suppliers, they would. And that kind of close-knit supply chain where resources are being mined, refined, and then made into batteries all in one place would be huge for Tesla's domestic energy projects, such as ramping up the Gigafactory in Texas to a Terafactory at some point in the next decade. Elon Musk has said that we will need 300 terawatt hours of battery capacity to actually transition all of our global energy requirements onto sustainable energy. That means all heating, cooling, transport, infrastructure, everything running on batteries. This number, 300 terawatt hours, is 1,000 times more battery capacity than what exists in the entire world as of right now. We have such a long way to go before we can actually achieve a zero carbon economy, and Tesla can't do this alone. Elon has projected that even in the best case scenario, Tesla can account for maybe 20% of the global output. So the fact that our national leaders are stepping up and taking this seriously is a good thing. Are they doing a perfect job? No. But hopefully, if we can all pull together and support this effort, no matter what political party you subscribe to, then we might actually have a fighting chance here. It's nice to have things to be hopeful about. Anyway, let us know what you think in the comments section. Can North America get it together and lead the world in green energy? Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up today if you liked it. That is so important for getting our content out to more people. If you enjoy the content, then you'd probably also enjoy our weekly newsletter, so sign up with the link down below at theteslaspace.com. A huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters who are listed on the screen now. You help us make the best content we can, and we really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.